my approach is going through a couple of slides very quickly. There's nothing worse than death by PowerPoint, so I will not do that to you. And then I really want this to be interactive and as beneficial as, it feels so weird holding onto this microphone without it actually projecting anywhere. It feels like I'm back in the days of the early 90s singing Backstreet Boys into a hairbrush, but I'll go with it. Anyway, as I was saying before, I'm here to serve all of you. You're doing amazing work. And so I want to make sure that I'm answering any of your questions as you go out into the world as active citizens as you are to implement retention and mentorship strategies. So feel free to stop me at any point with questions that you may have. Again, I am here for you, and I want to make sure that you take away as much as humanly possible from this presentation. So I know that we all have a huge challenge, and that's retaining talent. On an annual basis, companies are spending $70 billion in this effort to attract and keep the best top talent humanly possible. And it's hard because oftentimes you have the challenge of hiring the best talent, which is very capital intensive. And then you're looking at the millennial workforce where it's not enough to have a foosball table or free coffee. You really need to think about the ways in which you're showing a true investment in this talent to help them become next generation leaders. And it's expensive, as I mentioned before. Companies are spending a lot of money on superficial solutions that aren't working. It could be using an overworked program manager that is building a mentorship program from scratch in order to implement something that's just straight away but not as effective. And the downside of that is that it costs between 40 to 500% of that employee's salary just to replace them every time they leave. So let's say, for example, you have an employee that's making $40,000 a year. That range varies drastically, and depending on your company's budget, that could really break the bank. One of the key solutions to helping retain your millennial talent especially is mentorship. 71% of millennials cite mentorship as the #1 reason why they would choose one employer over another. And that's because mentorship, as the slide says, it matters. 14 million minority professionals will actually leave their employer each year because of a lack of inclusion practices. And mentorship is one of the best ways to help mitigate that. However, when it comes to corporate mentorship and when you're matching your talent to someone within your company or your organization, when you make that match, you're really telling that employee, this is who I see in you. So if you're matching that employee to someone where there's no compatibility or they don't like the person or there's just some sort of barrier to connecting with that person, now there's a disjoint between how they see themselves and how the employer sees them, and they will most likely leave and find a safe landing where they're actually welcomed and seen as the employees that they are. And this happened to me, actually. So my own experience, I come from the Fortune 500 world managing teams for defense contractors before taking on my company full time. And oftentimes I was matched to the only woman of color, the only person on the engineering team with me, and that was it. You know, hey, another woman, we're done. And that's really not enough to make you laugh, but it happened, and guess what I did? Left for another employer about every year and a half because it was clear that they did not see me as the employee and the rising star that I was. And I ended up staying with my previous employer, PwC, for 3.5 years because I was connected to the right mentor, where there was chemistry. I learned a lot from that person and became the youngest manager in the history of PwC's marketing and sales division. Through that experience, I realized that there's a lot of work to be done in this mentorship space. If we can take two people on an app based on pictures that they like with each other, whatever else for relationship compatibility, there's no reason why we can't do the same thing for mentorship. When you look at what makes a strong relationship, it's professional personality, industry, skill set, and that general chemistry, and not so much about the demographics. Because at the end of the day, what you look like doesn't have as much to do with how you actually go into the world and the types of roles that you want and who you want to connect with. And so that's why I built the Mentor Method. I promise this is not a sales pitch, but we're a B2B software that helps organizations match their rising talent to the right mentors inside their company to make their workplaces more inclusive. So we looked at the online dating model where you put in what you want out of the future and compatibility features. We built a patent-pending algorithm that then removes the bias in mentorship and a framework focused on professional development. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of how this works. So this is Kwesi, Chief Talent Officer at Deloitte and one of our paying customers. He came to us because he was seeing a mass exodus of his millennial talent from his data science division simply because their mentorship program wasn't working. He had a program manager that on top of their 99 other tasks was also asked to then create a mentorship program from scratch, which oftentimes fell to the bottom of the list because we all know if we have 100 other things to do, that might not be number one on the list. So he realized that this do-it-yourself mentorship model just wasn't working. They were able to put together a spreadsheet to match people, but beyond that, there wasn't that chemistry and compatibility. So he came to the Mentor Method because of our software, and he wanted a more data-driven way to help him get those results and to be able to justify then getting a budget for a mentorship program to his CFO and senior leadership, because oftentimes it does require capital in order to build a sustainable mentorship program. So through the Mentor Method, this is how Priyanka, an associate, was matched to John, who was a manager. They signed up, they used our algorithm, they were matched to each other. They worked together for 4 months using our software and our guided checklists, and the benefits were seen straight away. Priyanka was then matched to somebody who understood her, and she was able to get the transferable skills necessary to evolve in her career. She was actually promoted at the end of the 4-month matching period, which was wonderful for her. But as a mentor, John now feels as though he's part of the company culture and the evolution of the company by being a mentor and being able to transfer what he's learned as a manager to somebody that's following in his footsteps. Now, beyond that, when it's applicable to this particular group, mentorship has the benefit of being able to expand knowledge, that transfer of institutional knowledge to the millennial workforce for succession planning, making sure that fresh perspectives are also met with past performance. That's where the innovation and the magic happens within organizations, where you're better able to then serve your customers and serve those that you support. And mentorship is one of the best ways to do that. It also helps with productivity. When your employees feel as though you like them and you want them to stay and you're investing in their future, they will give back to you. In fact, mentorship has been proven to increase productivity by 80% across functional teams. So I want to pause and get into some questions because actually, show of hands, how many of you have a mentorship program right now in your organization? Okay, so like 0.02%. That's fine. That actually works very well, and that's why I'm here. How many of you would like to see a mentorship program implemented? Much. I mean, I guess you have no choice but to raise your hands, but this is much better. Okay, good. So this is the part that really excites me in terms of these presentations. I'm actually going to move to the middle now and talk about this. Oftentimes, what we hear from our customers and just others in this space is, okay, Janice, this is great. We understand the benefit of mentorship. We get it, but where do we begin, right? To help with that, I have 5 bullet points here that we've seen be really helpful. And I want to give you guys some time to really think about this, ask me some questions in terms of how you can go about creating this from scratch. Now, show of hands again, who would be responsible for taking this on within your organizations? Would it be those of you here, or would it be somebody else? And just speak to me, please. It would be you. Are you all a part of the same team here? Okay, excellent. What about the rest of you? Would you all be the ones spearheading a mentorship program, or would you be reaching out to others to help? Others? Okay. So what I would recommend in that case, with your group specifically, since it would be you 3 here, that's great. You're already ahead of the curve because you know who will get the ball rolling. If you're not the point person for that, figure out who would be. and then bring them in as early as humanly possible and say, hey, I think we'd like to have a mentorship program. How can we get that going? We'd love your support and advocacy. But before you get into that, it's important to think about the return. As much as I wish warm and fuzzies paid bills, as we all know, they don't. And so thinking about the return on the business, those that you're serving, those that you're helping, but also your organization overall, making sure that you have concrete numbers that support that as it relates to what you're doing is first and foremost. That way, if any sort of executive sponsor wants to come on board, or if someone says that you don't need a mentorship program, you have enough information to show that it's actually beneficial to your organization. Once you have that together, it's actually a great way to pitch for a corporate sponsor. When I say corporate sponsor, I mean just somebody as high up the chain as you can. They don't even need to be in HR or talent management. But as senior as you can get, have them be your champion in mentorship. Because once employees start seeing this person coming to the meetings, they see their headshot, they see their emails, they'll respond more positively to engaging in the program. And you'll also get more mentors since they're seeing this executive. I keep remembering to hold my mic properly, but you'll see more executives sign on simply because this one person is sort of the brand ambassador for it. So for example, with Google, their chief diversity officer signed on for several mentorship programs. And of course, because it's their role, people expected that. And so once their chief information officer joined on board, they actually saw a 40% increase in the number of enrollments to mentorship programs because it was, one, unexpected, but two, that person runs a large portion of their employee base. So now people want to be like the CIO. They want to get closer to the CIO and then signed on to the mentorship program. So once you have your corporate sponsor, a big item that people do not think about, and we really wish they would, is budget. Because it's not enough to get, a thing of Sabra hummus and some pita chips and put people in a room for a mentorship program. It takes time and it takes a true investment. So figure out where you're going to get the funds. I'm not 100% sure how each organization is run here, but what we've seen go well is either someone within sales or engineering. Figure out who has the biggest budget, who is hemorrhaging talent the fastest, and see if you can get their support and at least a 6-month pilot for a mentorship program. And then once you see that ROI, then other departments will surely start to get involved. Unfortunately, sometimes HR departments, as important as those departments are, they don't always have the budgets that they deserve, to be honest with you. And so if they don't have the budget, that's been a beneficial way, just finding an executive sponsor somewhere else that has that capability. So once you have the budget, you have your sponsor, you know the ROI, figure out where the greatest need is. Usually all three, kind of 2, 3, and 4 end up correlating simply because the person with the greatest need will also want to advocate for a mentorship program and might also have money, since those are usually the highest turnover areas. Those are the ones that get the most funding. But let's say, for example, it's your women's groups or your LGBTQ+, or your vets, or however, if you have employee resource groups, perhaps that's a good way to start as a proof point and then expanding from there. Maybe it's your new hires, or maybe it's your millennial rising talent. However you want to structure it, figure out within your organization which group has the greatest need, and then get to know them, figure out what they want from a mentorship program, ask them a lot of questions about how you can serve them, and they will gladly give that information back to you. And then lastly, have ambassadors within that mentorship program. So let's say 1 through 4 happen perfectly. You're mentoring your millennial top performers. You're getting them ready. You have executives that are prepared to mentor them. And now it's just all systems go. Before you actually launch, make sure that you have people within the group that can serve as ambassadors so that you're able to, you want to sort of divide up the work, is what I'm saying. Because on top of your day-to-day tasks and on top of your executive sponsors' day-to-day tasks, you don't want this to fall by the wayside and then just become another thing that we put on our employee resource group board, or we put it up on SharePoint, God help me, and now it's just another thing that nobody ever took on, and you can say that you tried, but did you really if it's not actually working? So make sure that you have ambassadors within the group that will help carry the torch for mentorship and continue implementing that forward. So those were the usual starting points. I want to stop talking and hear a little bit more about where you are in your process, answer any questions about mentorship, and just keep an open dialogue from here. Any questions? Yes.
So can you describe to me what a mentorship actually looks like from your perspective?
Sure. In terms of the mentee-mentor relationship or the program?
Meeting up for coffee, or is it like professional development? Like what do you see a mentorship program actually doing?
Flexible for the people involved is the abbreviated version. And by that I mean, I'm just gonna set this down. By that I mean no two mentor relationships are alike, right? So let's say you and I, mentee mentor, okay? So we meet within our organization. Where do you work? Excellent, thank you for your service. I love the parks here. I just moved here a year ago. It's beautiful, so thank you. So let's say mentee, mentor, okay? We meet through Texas Parks, and you want to develop your skill set in something. It's up to us to determine how often we can meet. My recommendation is once a month for 4 months. What we find is that when you have a looser rein on how often people are supposed to meet, just psychology, people then are more motivated to meet with one another more frequently. So on average, if you say about once a month for 4 months, we've seen people meet about once every other week, just because they have the flexibility to do so. But it really depends on the type of mentor relationship you want. Like, let's say you just want to learn, what's a skill that you'd like to learn, actually, professionally? Great. Okay. Then this works. So, okay, so you want to learn and be mentored on public speaking. So let's say for that, we don't need to meet once every other week. But let's say maybe that you have a Toastmasters event or you have a presentation to give or something. Then maybe we meet once a month as you get closer to it. Or maybe we meet once a month and we just start throwing you into speaking engagements. I can do that, by the way. Let me know when you're ready to get you started. No, please email me. I would love to help you with that. But maybe it's a meeting once a month for 4 months to help you build up your confidence and that acumen in finding groups and other people around you to help you with that. But let's say it's, I don't know, systems engineering. That might be more intensive and might require once every other week or a weekly project or something just to get you ready for a promotion or whatever the goal may be. But honestly, it depends on both people, both the mentor's availability and the mentees.
So what I'm hearing you say is it's probably a good idea at the beginning of the relationship to identify what the goals are.
100%, yes. So once you've gone through with setting up the program, it's important to have a kickoff. And so in that kickoff, we call it Mentoring 101. So you explain to the mentees their roles and responsibilities and that the onus is really on them to carry this mentorship relationship forward. So having the courage and the professionalism to reach out to the mentor and say, hey, I'd like to work with you on these 3 things. I'd love your help because of X, Y, and Z. How do you feel about meeting X number of times? And it's a mentor's responsibility to be realistic about their availability, but also make more time for that mentee over that duration of time. But yes, go over goals, go over roles and responsibilities, go over expectations. We usually tell our mentees, it's great. Please have the goal of making $60,000 more in 4 months. I love that kind of big thinking, but also be realistic with the fact that that might not happen and have mentors around you that are able to say, okay, maybe not. But here are other ways that we can get you $60,000 in 3 years and sort of help get them mentored and ready. It's a great starting question. Thank you.
Wouldn't you agree? I like that you touched on roles and responsibilities, but I would also expect that the mentor is obviously committed to sharing, doing this knowledge sharing and coaching,
Correct.
if you will. But it would seem to me that it would be beneficial to begin that relationship with the mentee and be able to see your own ROI. If I was spending time and I was Alric's mentor, and I was asking him, coaching him on things and giving him, maybe stuff to read on whatever. What do you want to learn? Teams? But if Alric kept coming back and it not having shown any, not having moved the needle,
Yep.
if you will, then, that seems, to me, that would be, you would sort of break the contract at that, at a certain point anyway.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So you didn't follow what I was saying. I guess what I was saying was.
I was waiting for the punchline. I apologize.
There's a certain amount of rules of engagement, right? And if the mentee is not putting in the work
Right.
necessary to gain a new skill set or develop public speaking confidence or whatever it is, and
Sure.
they're just coming and wanting to have lunch with you every once a month. At some point you would probably want to say, I don't think you're ready for this, or I'm not the right mentor for you.
Yeah, you have
We can
every
never work
right.
out.
Yeah, you have every right to break up with your mentee or your mentor. If they're not delivering value, you are allowed to do that. I think, too, before it gets to that point, setting up within your mentorship program those sort of contingencies. So letting them know, again, with the Mentoring 101, that the onus is on them. Come with an agenda. I'm actually, would you mind sharing my email address? I'll actually... Perfect. Okay. Well, then I will email you my Mentoring 101 kit if you wouldn't mind just distributing it to the group. That might actually be more helpful. Just in terms of, you're welcome. Mentorship is very important. So whatever I can do to give back for the great work that you're all doing. But in that, it discusses how often to reach out to a mentor, the fact that it's really on the mentee to be pushing the needle forward, and the mentor serves as the coach that sort of helps guide them over the landmines to reach that goal. But yes, you are free to end the relationship. Before doing that, I think it's great to have an honest conversation of, here are the things that I'm seeing. You're not moving the needle forward. You're just meeting with me for lunch. I don't know why we're spending $20 to meet. Kind of a conversation, more professional than that. But here are the things that I'm seeing, and I'm concerned about these 3 things. What can we do over the next 2 weeks to improve upon this relationship? Because I want to see you do well, but I'm feeling conflicted because the ROI for your own development isn't being realized, and I'd hate to see you do that as your mentor.
Sure. And it could be something personal or.
Right, you never know, but I think,
Something's going on.
yeah, and I think it's important just to seek first to understand and then go from there. That's a great point, though.
So that's the exit strategy you build
Yes.
into your rules of engagement.
Exactly. Everyone needs an exit strategy. Yes.
Have you noticed the difference between, the informal mentorship process versus the formal? Because,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're setting up a mentorship program and saying, we're gonna meet once a month for 4 months, or we're gonna meet this much for this long, and have exit strategies and all those things, I mean, that kind of, in my experience with mentorship, whether I'm mentoring somebody or somebody is mentoring me, the successful relationships that I've built have always been ongoing. Like, they don't.
Absolutely.
Right.
And cap. I mean,
Yeah.
I just went home and saw my mentor from college, and it's been 10 years, right? And it's like, here's my career, this is where we're
Yeah.
going. And I have other students who come to me that I worked with, and they come back. And, understanding and having that kind of fundamental historical knowledge, I feel like is a lot more beneficial than just first getting to know somebody. It's like long-term dating, right? Like you're
Yeah, exactly.
If when you started up and you say, this is how I'm going to break up with you in 4 months if this doesn't work out,
Yeah.
It seems kind of like you're almost not setting it up for success.
Yes, but I think you are setting it up for success if you're going in, let's use the relationship metaphor. So if you're using that to setting up your deal breakers, right? Like if I don't hear from you for 3 days, I'm assuming that you are not that serious about the opportunity to date me, right? Something like that, right, is a deal breaker. I know. It's harsh, but let's be real. Worth it. Let's be real. But outside of that, right? So let's say you just, like, same way you would with a relationship, you have your deal breakers, right? So it's not necessarily saying, if you do this, I'm out. It's saying, if I see these things, I just want to make sure that you're doing well and we'll have a conversation about it. And also just being respectful of each other's time. I do say that with the benefit and the purpose of a structured mentorship program is to help the 64% of millennials that find initiating a mentorship program intimidating. Because oftentimes, especially even for me, so I'll get into my story just a little bit, but I'm first generation American from the Congo. My parents immigrated here in the 70s, and they did fine, you know, just middle America, like we did fine in Northern Virginia, close to DC. But when it came to, when I graduated in 2009, we're about the same age, the economy was garbage. And the advice that I was hearing was to use my network or get a mentor. Well, my network was in Kinshasa on a dirt road selling fabric for $2 a day. I don't have a network at that point, right? And then trying to figure out how to find mentors, I'm like, well, who am I asking? Because most of my parents' friends are in a similar boat or they immigrated, and like it wasn't lining up for me naturally. And so I really had to lean in on corporate mentorship programs or professional women's mentorship programs to help me find those people. But even then, it's an intimidating process if you don't even know where to get started and all your reading is about, you know, mentorship, but it's still too vague. And so the purpose of structured mentorship programs is to play wing person for the people that are having a hard time finding the right mentors or maybe want to mentor somebody but don't know where to go, and then facilitating that and curating that relationship, and then having an end date allows people to say, okay, if it wasn't for them, they can leave, but they can also continue that relationship further, but it doesn't have to be so structured at that point. They can come back 10 years later if they need to. They can come back a quarter later, but just it helps sort of pour gasoline onto that fire of ambition and then allowing it to kind of simmer and see where it floats off.
Do you like sticking with that same metaphor? Do you
Yeah.
like speed dating? Or like,
We do, actually.
Because, you know, finding inspiration, especially in the millennial generation, we have a much older workforce.
Yep.
And looking around and figuring out who actually inspires you, who's going to continue to
Yeah.
be your champion within your organization. It's been really hard as young people in our workforce because, you know, there are some people who are willing to do it, but there's some people who come in with extreme stereotypes, right?
Oh, I believe that 100%. Coming from defense contracting, I empathize fully. And so what we do, actually, we should actually talk about this, another partnership idea, because we put on speed mentoring events, which is sort of everybody here in this room, we would have, you know, table numbers, everything else, and similar to speed dating, you would go from table to table connecting with people and then continuing the conversations from there. So yeah, we should where do you work? Oh, excellent. Such a lively group. I love it. Well, I'm glad. Okay. So we should definitely talk about that after this, for sure. Thank you for that commentary and for your question.
So really,
Yes.
I'm so sorry. So the exit strategy is not something that does it necessarily have to be communicated, or could it be something that you hold internally that you just know that, okay, if the relationship is heading this way, then it may be time to exit?
I wouldn't put that out there first meeting, but I would say, you know, maybe second, wait until it really needs to be discussed is what I would say, but know in the back of your mind what your bargaining range is. The same way if you were going into a negotiation or any sort of professional relationship, you wouldn't say, hey, I'm only going to work here for 365 days, that way I'm a creative director. You just hold on to that, right? So I would practice that same restraint, but be willing to have that discussion if needed. Yes. All right. Okay. Okay.
I do, because you're more likely, number one, all the onus isn't on that one person to develop. And it's hard to find somebody who's going to fulfill all your expectations.
Okay.
And so if you can target what it is that you need mentoring in or invite mentoring in, look for a couple of people or
Yep.
three people to serve as mentors for those specific things. You're just not gonna find your ideal mentor.
I would say no more than 3. I think that's probably too many mentors at that point. But
Somebody's gonna be really good with networking skills.
absolutely.
Somebody's gonna be really good at public speaking skills, and so, but you're not typically gonna find that in one person.
Absolutely.
So
I agree with
some
that.
people, like you were saying, it's hard to find the person who inspires me. Well, you look for that person who inspires you, but that inspirational person may not be able to help you in this other thing that you need. So it makes it easier to find what it is that you need if you look for a couple, we'll say a couple.
I agree. And I think in that vein, too, if you have that mentor, that person in your network, feel free just to ask them, who are 3 other people that based on where I am in my stage of life you believe I should speak with? And then, here are the areas that I want to refine. But I completely agree, even for myself as an entrepreneur, I have, a mentor in investing because we're fundraising. I have a mentor in professional acumen, and just being a woman in entrepreneurship in tech is hard enough. So finding somebody that can help me navigate those spaces. And so, yeah, you want almost like a board of advisors professionally. That does take time, and every relationship will be different. Sometimes I reach out to Deborah about once every 6 months when I'm back home in the DC metro area, and that works for us. Gordon, I speak to him about monthly and see him almost every day in the co-working space where I'm at. So it just depends on that relationship.
It keeps you from being disillusioned with that person because you'll say, well, they're good in this, but they're not good in that. Okay, well, don't listen to them.
Exactly. I agree. I +1 on everything you're saying. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. We at Catapult did a mentoring program, and we had it set up for it was a minimum of 3, and the expectation. So it breaks the feeling like you have to do more than that.
Yep.
But then thereafter, you're more than welcome to. So it takes away from the hesitation or fear going into the relationship. But I do agree with how do you find the one that works for you? Because a lot of times they can have skill set, but energetically, do you really vibe together?
Right. And that chemistry is so important. Honestly, oftentimes that chemistry and getting on with someone is almost more important than their title or their skill set, because you'll still learn from them and you'll want to actually meet with them more frequently rather than somebody who on paper sounds correct, but personality-wise, they're just a dumpster fire of a human being and you don't want to see them, and it just doesn't work. So, and that's part of the reason why the algorithm that I built. Yeah, okay, so
Does it help them with the matching, and then
it does.
in the reference to the dating, is there a way to say, okay, yes, no swipe left, that's a no?
No, yeah.
Find the one, and then do you allow for recommendations? So maybe this person doesn't work, but I can recommend you to someone that feels it would.
Yeah, so there are some mentorship, and I call it mentorship, matching things where you just swipe, but it's really just a picture and the person's title, and that's not enough. I mean, then you're just going based on aesthetics and outward things, which is not the point of mentorship. So we have a patent pending algorithm that matches based on personality parameters, the skills that you want to develop, and the industries that you either want to break into or you're a part of. Based on that, 90% of our matches are still in communication 3.5 years later, which is great. And I just pulled the data just to make sure before coming in here today. So, but our algorithm helps reduce that bias in mentorship, but then also make sure that you're meeting somebody that you're compatible with versus just another person because you both signed up for a mentorship program. What was the other part of your question?
Do you have the recommendations?
Yes. Yep. So you actually get your top 3 matches, top 3 mentees, top 3 mentors, and you can speak to all 3 throughout that mentorship process. And then if, let's say, it doesn't work out for whatever reason, a mentor can also, so part of our, I'm going to geek out for a minute. So my background's in tech. I'm going to go home and just keep coding the product as soon as this is done, actually. And so what we're building out right now, and I'm so excited for it, is when you sign in, especially as a mentor, we're now going to be, we already have single sign-on with LinkedIn. Let me know if I'm getting too far into the tech weed, by the way. But we have single sign-on with LinkedIn. And so now when a mentee and mentor are matched up together, the top 3 and top 3, the mentor will be able to see which of their connections based on the mentee's user input might be a best connection for that person. We're still tweaking it, full disclosure, because what I know I'm connected to certain people that I don't even remember accepting the invite. But that's the idea, to at least make it easier to say, okay, well, maybe this person should meet with these 3 people. But internally to the organization right now, we're integrating with human resource management tools so that you're able to see. So for example, Workday was our first integration. And the way I smile about this is insane. I apologize. But we integrated with Workday first. And so now people within the same organization, based on the mentee's user input, you can see other departments and people that might be a good fit to connect the mentee to, but we haven't done personal references yet. We assume that they can just do that via email. Yeah. You're welcome. Yes.
I had a question sort of about what's on the other side of the table, the mentees who are coming in.
Yeah.
I kind of have this sort of sheepish feeling about approaching or having some of the folks that are set to retire. There's a lot of people like, I can retire any minute now. I can
Yeah.
right? And they're
Yeah.
waiting for that one last change that's going to push them out the door.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, can you come talk to this person? I'm afraid
Yeah.
to put one more thing on their plate. But I think that there's probably a ton of people that could see it differently. So I wonder
Yeah.
if you could speak a little bit to maybe this selling point for them. I know they're there, but maybe in your experience. And then also, do you have any statistics or data about maybe, yes, they stayed 6 more months because of this relationship that they had with this person, and they felt that their expertise was being valued, like the actual retention numbers around being engaged in that, because holding on to them for 6 more months is going to make a difference.
Absolutely. So mentorship has been shown to increase retention of mentors specifically by 30%. I know, it's a big number. And so that's really important. And then mentees, because they usually come in a little bit earlier depending on this stage, they're promoted 5 times faster. So however that looks within the organization in which you're a part of. In terms of sweetening the deal for those that are really just on the cusp of throwing in the towel, again, I can empathize with that coming from defense contracting and consulting, making sure that they understand that it's not another task necessarily, but they're playing a part in the company that, has paid their bills for however long they've been there, really. But it's making sure that they understand that they're playing a part in the future of that company and that you want to learn from them and sort of paying respect to the time, the work, the knowledge that they've captured over the duration of their career, and making sure that they understand that you don't want that to disappear. You want to find some way to, capture that and freeze it and transfer it over to the next generation so that you can create more leaders like them. Something along those lines. You know your team better. Some teams would be like, that's nonsense. What do you want me to do? But overall, that would be the message that we've used, and that's been helpful for our clients as well. Yes.
Quick question. How do you measure the key performance indicators?
Sure.
To know if you're, as an administrator, how do I know if my program is a success? I guess retention is one of them, but what other factors are you looking at?
Yeah. Retention and turnover, skills development, confidence within your mentees and mentors for what they're developing, especially goals-wise. You can also check your ROI by the number of mentors who re-engage again for another cycle. That's always a big indicator. If they would like to do it again or maybe ask for another mentee, another KPI to check is the number of people who register a second time around, so mentees, if they've already gone through a program, Perhaps they're letting their friends know, and now you're seeing double the number of users that want to sign up for mentorship. That's a strong KPI. You can see the number of promotions that are being given. So what Deloitte does is they have like a control, which is people not using the mentor method, and then people using the mentor method, and they see who gets promoted more often. And so we beat them 6 times over, which is great for us. And so in a 4-month period, out of just a small sample of 20 that we tested this with, 1 person in the control group got promoted, and 6 out of our 20 got promoted in that 4-month period. So it's a strong ROI for them, and why they're still with us 2 years later into another contract. But there are ways that you can measure it. What I would say is no KPI is the same between another company. So look at what matters for your team, but then also what matters for your senior leadership, and what KPIs would help them be more productive in their roles, because then they're more likely to put in some money to support a mentorship program as well. So.
Yeah, I was going to say some of that could be qualitative, right? You ask the mentors, you know, how's it going? How do you see this person growing in this capacity? Or they
Absolutely. So within the mentor method, we do a text prompt, and then we also have, similar to Airbnb or Lyft or Uber, how you can rate your experience and your stay. We have an automatic survey that is sent out to users for their experience with their mentee and mentor. And that's still qualitative. If you're giving your mentor 4 out of 5 stars, that's based on the quality of the relationship, but you're still able to track that, so then you're able to go to leadership and say, hey, look, 60% of our mentees are giving their mentors 4 out of 5 stars. This thing is working. And you just want to make sure that you have
and I think
both.
you're dealing with much larger data sets. Ours would be much smaller. So
Sure.
I think we could gather some interviews, and that would be that also for our executive sponsors, having seeing those types of interviews that are positive, et cetera.
Yeah.
That
So
would-
maybe
that
like
would
a
drive lot.
testimonial kind of thing. That'll work too, depending. With one of our customers, we did that. We actually set up shop and then just asked people questions about their experience, and we videotaped it and then shared it with their senior leadership. It depends on the culture, because some people care and some people are like, who is employee number 4, 5, 6, 7? Like they don't know. So it just depends. How are we doing on time?
Have to be the heavy.
Okay.
So, Janice, are you going to be able to stay for the lunch panel?
I must be going, actually. It's very exciting. We just got chosen to pitch the Obama Foundation tomorrow morning, and I found out in the parking garage. Thank you. I just found out in the parking garage, so I have aged 5 years by the time I got into here, and I must put together in the next several hours a 3-minute pitch specifically for them. So I really would love to, but I need to, I'm freaking out now that I just said it out loud, but I need to head out. I'm sorry.
Have Janice part of the series or something? Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for
Yeah,
having
this has
me.
been
Thank you
great.
all so much for your time.
Yeah.